Hello, my name is Daniel Burke. I am presenting an instructional introductory video on how to study paganism as a Christian. Number one, do not assume pagans are lost. This sounds a little shocking to some Christians. This is a common assumption, but it's not biblical, as I will show. This assumption creates a barrier, a prejudice in the mind where you're not in a position to appreciate anything paganism has to offer. And if you're studying paganism, chances are you may have some pagan dialogue partners, and they won't be very receptive when they may feel insulted even by this assumption. In Romans 2:14 through 15, the Apostle Paul says, "For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts, the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another." And in verse 15, it clarifies that this occurs in the day when God shall judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ, according to my gospel. So on the judgment day, they show the law written in their hearts. And you may recognize the law written in the heart bit. That is the new covenant. And we can see this in Hebrews 10. "For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, saith the Lord. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts. I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people." So we do not assume pagans are lost. We also should not assume that pagans are not part of the same spiritual body of Christ. Once again, this creates a psychological barrier and anticipation of not finding anything of value. Once again, this can also bias your dialogue partner to not want to listen to you very much. Here's an issue to consider. In Acts 17:23, Paul says to a group of polytheists, he says, "Whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you." So these polytheists are worshiping the true God, but apparently they're ignorant of his oneness. So there appears to be something more essential to the identification of the true God than merely his numerity. What determines whether we should describe people as worshiping a false God or describe them as worshiping the true God ignorantly? The identity of the true God, along with what it means to follow God, is determined by the character of love. In 1 John 4:7 through 8, John says, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and every one that loveth is born of God, and knoweth God. He that loveth not knoweth not God, for God is love." And in 1 John 3:10, it says, "In this the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother." So love is the essential characteristic identifying the true God, and it is the attitude or the motivation which determines who the followers of God are. Number 3, do not study only to find what is wrong with paganism. It's a temptation to Christians to study someone else's belief systems only to find flaw with it so that we can show them how ours is better. Now, I do agree with the importance of apologetics, but we shouldn't be so one-sided. There's a lot to appreciate. For example, paganism can contain insights into natural theology. Natural theology meaning what is revealed about God from the universe, from nature, rather than from divine revelation like the Bible. Romans 1:20 says, "For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead." The early church made great use of Greek philosophy. These, of course, were pagans. And from my experience, many Hindu schools of thought contain proofs of God's existence not found in Western philosophy. In fact, I think that the best arguments for God's existence are found in the Hindu schools of thought. Do not be afraid of parallel narratives. Now, not everyone here, like me, has friends and associates that are enamored with sorcery, consider themselves neo-pagans, and are fond of criticizing Christianity by pointing out how our narratives in many places seems to be an unoriginal iteration of that found throughout religions all over the world, all through history. You may run into this critique, though, from atheists. It's a pretty common one to try to say that there's just psychological reasons. This is the archetype theory. Psychological reasons why people come up with these similar stories. So Joseph Campbell would be one of the ones that you would find doing that a lot. Now, there is a methodology in linguistics called the genetic comparative method, which becomes relevant here. There is something called Proto-Indo-European. It's a language that's completely non-attested. That is to say, they've never found a sample of it. The only reason they know it exists is because as Proto-Indo-European evolved into the many languages of throughout the Near East, India, Europe, it left pieces the same as it changed others. So linguists were able to match up those pieces that were left the same and reconstruct the ancestor language. Now, if you take this methodology, and I thought I was original at the time when I did it, but I applied it to mythemes, that is, elements of myth. And I was able to reconstruct the story of creation, like we find in Genesis, in all its details, the flood, the Tower of Babel, and dispersion of nations. Other people had, to some extent, in an informal way, inspired this idea. C.S. Lewis was converted to Christianity through paganism. There was a book that was kind of famous at the time called The Golden Bough by Fraser, and one of his skeptical friends made the comment, there's so much to do with the dying and resurrecting God, you'd actually think it happened once. And this set him down the path. As I began to further my research on this, I had a chance conversation, perhaps providential, with somebody by the name of Michael Witzel. I didn't realize what a great man he was. He's at Harvard University. He's a professor. He said to me, it sounds like you're doing what I'm doing. And introduced me to his book, The Origins of the World's Mythologies. He completely debunks the psychological archetype theory. And there's too much specificity and even order that all of these stories fit into one overarching theme. And but this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more research to be done. He doesn't go into the specificity that Christians would be interested in for testing our narrative against Earth's original oral tradition. A lot of reconstruction needs to be made. But here's the point, even if you're not going into heavy-duty research. As you study, don't be afraid of parallels. Global parallels indicate features present in Earth's original oral tradition, and that's very affirming to us as Christians. And that's it. Thank you very much.